Uh, all right. I have the honor to present Joe Barlinski and Bill Elliott, and most important, I had the privilege to coach under Bill for 2 seasons at University of West Florida. During this time, I also had the privilege to build a good relationship with Joe and to cooperate with him on the women's program. Both of these coaches have saved for sure has saved me as a coach, and I mean it's been a great journey with Bill. I have played for him under him for 5 years and coached under him for 2 years. So I can probably say that he's one of the most important mentors I've had, and he definitely has saved my vision as a coach and the culture and education that I try to teach through the sport. Things that you can see on the screen already. Bill Elliott has been the head coach at University of West Florida for 26 years, 3 times National Coach of the Year, 2-time Gulf South Conference Coach of the Decade. He has a USAF license. He also has coached prior to that since 1995 on the women's University of West Florida, and has won 9 GSC championships, the most in the conference history. So he has a great resume. Joe Barlinski, head women's coach for UWF, University of West Florida, for 20 years, 4 times National Coach of the Year, 2-time Gulf South Conference Coach of the Decade. He has as well one of the winningest coaches in NCAA history. And he has set the standard for success not only at the University of West Florida, but in the Gulf South Conference. So I'm proud to present both of you, and welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, Juan.
Thanks, Juan. We're glad to be here. We're going to take you guys, Joe and I are going to take you guys through a few slides. Hopefully everyone can see on the screen what we see, and talk about some different aspects of recruiting, and then give you guys an opportunity to ask questions or cover any areas that we might not have touched on. So if I can get the technology to work, we'll see. Okay. So my slides, as I've been a men's coach for 20 years since Joe joined our staff at West Florida, and haven't worked on the women's side. Most of my slides pertain to the men's side of things. So I'll kind of talk through that, and then Joe can tell you what the differences are in the women's. So the first slide is just giving you a landscape of college soccer. How many Division I programs, Division II, Division III, NAI, junior college, Christian college. The average roster size, if you can see it, I know it's hidden from me right now, but it's in the 30s. And then as you look down the max scholarships. So one thing that you can figure out real quickly as you look at this, and one of the points of the slide, if you're lucky enough to play soccer in college, there's a good chance there's very few full scholarships out there. You're typically going to be balancing academic money and financial aid along with your, if you're lucky enough to get some soccer money, and putting all those things together to get a package that makes the school affordable for you. So it's just a little quick snapshot. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Joe, anything that, obviously the women's a little bit different, you want to add something?
Yeah, the women D1 programs are well over 300 Division I programs out there. So quite a few opportunities. Division II, about 260. And then the rest is pretty equal. So quite a few universities out there. And if you just do the math, like Coach Elliott was saying, there's not a lot of big scholarships. So the reality is you've got to understand the reality and work hard academically so that the possibility of some academic money frees up. And that's a big thing we'll talk about a little bit later.
All right. So the next one is just, again, a snapshot on the men's side, but to give you some percentages of the number of players that are playing in high school, how many go on to play in college, what the percentage is, added in there the percentage that go on and play professional. And then if you kind of look down, percentage of men's college players who go to pro and so forth. So just again, just trying to educate you guys and give you an opportunity to look at these numbers and understand outside of your immediate area in Chattanooga, what the big picture looks like, what the view from a Mile High is. Joe, anything you want to add on the women's side?
Yeah, obviously on the women's side, there's very limited opportunity on the professional side with the NWSL in America, very limited. There are a lot of places to continue on afterwards. I know we've sent dozens and dozens of players on from West Florida to Iceland and Spain and Costa Rica. There are places, but again, for the majority of the players, I think the college on the women's side, the college is the pinnacle. Again, very few. I know we do have a couple of West Florida kids that have gone into the NWSL. You know, Denisha Blackwood playing now down at the Houston Dash, but it's very limited. So if you look at the math numbers you have on the screen, Coach Elliott, the percentage of going all the way is very small. And so again, I get back to the academic side. Make sure you're at the university for the right reasons for your education.
Okay, so next is we've got a slide there that just talks about some of the timelines when college coaches can start to contact you and some of the rules and everything that surround that. So basically June 15th, preceding your junior year, is when coaches can start to reach out and contact you. Prior to that, you're allowed to take unofficial visits to campus and reach out. But in terms of schools replying, they're limited to sending camp information and just general school information. So understanding the timeline and everything like that is important. There's also been in recent years a lot of rules, particularly with Division I women's soccer, about the conversations they can even have with your club coaches and other people ahead of time. So we're going to start to dive into what I consider more the meat of it. But again, this is trying to get you the overview. Joe, Steve, any of you, anything to add to what I put on the screen?
Yeah, the D1s are now, as of June 1st coming up, actually get a chance to evaluate and do a little bit more active. We've been allowed at Division II. We've been nonstop. I guess we can't catch COVID, but we've been allowed to go out and recruit and bring students on campus. We've taken full advantage of it. Our identification camps have blown up, but starting June 1, the D1s can start to be a little bit more active. You'll see more ID camps out there and things like that starting here next week.
Steve, anything there from you? Okay. So the timeline for the men and women is probably about a year different. The women's process starts in a lot of ways probably 1 year prior to the men's. But as you start to look at it, my advice during your freshman and sophomore years of high school, just work on getting better. Don't worry about what camps you're going to some extent, even what leagues or showcases you're playing in. Just work on working with your coaches, training, and trying to become the best player you can be. Also working on, as we've already mentioned a couple of times, working on your GPA, working on your academics, making sure you're prepared that way. Because I promise you, if you go to, no matter where you go, no matter where a coach sees you, if they like you or if they're intrigued in any way, the next question's coming is, what are your academics like? What's your GPA? What are your test scores? Absolutely every time. And whether there's another question depends on the answer to that question. So you've got to start taking care of all those things. On the men's side, when you get into your junior years, when I think you really start to research schools, take SATs, maybe take SAT prep classes, prepare some video highlights, and all of those things. I think that it's good, personally, 5 to 15 schools that you want to try to target. And I think we got a slide where we're going to talk a little bit about that, but and then most of the recruiting though for on the men's side happens during your senior year. And a lot of it, to be honest, outside of Power 5 D1 programs, happens between Thanksgiving and spring break of your senior year, which seems incredibly late, maybe based on what's going on in the women's game. But it's the reality. There's a lot of players out there. There's a lot of players around the world trying to get into the men's college programs, and there's limited spots. And so typically the male athletes developing a little bit later. So coaches can afford to be patient, take their time, and kind of work through prospect list and make some decisions. Now, Joe, I think the timeline, if you want to comment on the women's side, is a little different.
Yeah, it's sped up on the women's side, obviously. And that's why I think in your freshman year and such, start to visit places, meaning go see the schools. If you're doing a showcase event in Greenville, I know ECNL is coming up over there. There's a dozen or so schools nearby. So if you get a chance to go and do these kind of things, then you go and visit some of the local schools, and you start to get an idea of what you want to look at in college and everything like that. So I say by a year, the timeline is again, freshman, sophomore year, you really need to start to look at, just the school for itself and everything like that. And then putting together the highlight video and all that kind of stuff as well. So probably by a year. And don't be fooled by, you hear someone that's committed on June 15th of their junior year, because that's a rare occasion. And then everyone starts to panic, because there's going to be that one, youth national kid that commits, and then everyone's thinking they're behind the game. Be patient, get better, as Coach Elliott said, and you'll find a good opportunity. But again, it's probably like a little bit, a year quicker. But with this Google machine box that you guys have, use it to look, do virtual tours. Just start to check out all the schools, and that'll lead into what Coach Elliott is putting up there on screen. But you got to start and do your research.
So the next slide starts to, what you can do and what you can control. And I think as a family, you have to discuss the criteria that you're looking at. And as Joe said, which is good advice, if you're traveling into interesting areas that have some schools during your freshman and sophomore, junior year, start to maybe walk around campus, or at least drive through campus, or take some virtual tours and see, because you may not know what you want or what you like right now. But it's really important to have a lot of discussion and give some thought to distance from home, academic majors if you know them, cost, size of the school, all these things. And you'll notice as I start to talk through the things that are important about choosing a university or a college, I haven't mentioned the soccer program. And in my opinion, that should only be a small part of the decision, shouldn't drive the entire decisions. I think as parents and as athletes, you need to look at the school and ask yourself if you would be happy at that school if soccer wasn't in the picture. If the answer is yes, it's probably a good choice. If the answer is no, I would think long and hard about making that choice. When you start to research the schools and look at all the criteria, and maybe there's some criteria I've forgotten that might be important to you, but I would recommend a list of maybe 5 to 15 schools that meet your criteria. Check out their websites, get the email addresses of the coach. I personally don't think that you need recruiting services. In some cases, they can maybe be helpful. But if you're willing to put in a little bit of work, you can do most of the stuff yourself. So I'm on the fence on those, but I know that when I get mass emails from recruiting service, email addresses and things like that, I have a special place that I file those often. So I much prefer a personalized email that that tells me why you're interested in the university that I work at. And I think most coaches do. I like your school because it's in the mountains of North Carolina. I've always wanted to live there, whatever the case may be. You've got a major that I like. So I think that's really important. And when your communication, we'll talk about that. I've got a little letter that you can take a look at, but it's short and sweet and why you like the school. So you got to come up with some good reasons there. Create a highlight video, 3 to 5 minutes, that highlights your strengths and your personality as a player. If you're a defender that's a hard tackler and wins headers, make sure that's on there. If you're a great passer of the ball or a goal scorer, make sure that's on there. The quality of the video, the level of competition is important, and make sure you get some good stuff early that shows your dynamic qualities. Because I don't know many coaches, we get a lot each day, we get a lot of emails, and if something in the first 30 seconds of the video, 15 seconds, 30 seconds of the video doesn't catch you, as a coach, you're probably not watching the next 3 minutes. So you got to put that together. And last thing for me is just don't mass email. I mean, just you probably, if you mass email, you're getting no response. If you're lucky, you might get a camp invitation. So those are my thoughts. Joe, anything you want to add about this slide?
No, you're exactly correct. Find out, do you want a small school, big school, city school, beach school, mountain school? Just really start to narrow those kind of things down. As far as the recruiting service video, my assistant had a good point. I heard him chatting with a prospective student athlete. Maybe use that money for SAT, ACT prep, because if you're not going to go to school in California, then you don't need to send out those mass emails from the recruiting service to all the schools in California and everything like that. With a little bit extra research and ownership of what you're doing, I think you can narrow down a good handful of places. And if you do want to look across the country, then that's one option. But he had mentioned, use that money for SAT, ACT prep, and I thought that was a pretty good bit of advice.
One thing I would say about the recruiting services, some of the platforms and everything that aren't very expensive and give you filters and everything when you research schools and everything, those can be helpful, I think. I still would go back to your personal email when you want to contact coaches. And as coaches, we want to hear from the prospect, the student athlete, not the parents. We're happy. Everyone I know as coaches is more than happy and understand that the parents and the family need to be involved in the process. We're happy to ask questions. We're happy to visit, spend time on the phone, whatever is necessary. But it's going to be the student who's going to be having to communicate with the coach once they get to the campus. And so it's important that starts in the recruiting process. And so if the emails are all coming from, if it's a daughter that's wanting to be recruited and all the emails are coming from dad's email address, that's not too hard to figure out as a coach.
And I would recommend go and watch these teams play, see if your style of play fits in with a lot of these universities. So I think it's massive to go and it helps you in learning the game. If you're a center back and you want to play a center back in college, go watch, but just see if these universities fit how your strengths fit in and everything like that. So visiting and watching games can be fantastic in narrowing down your options and your choices. If they don't, I know personally, my daughter's a 2023, a sophomore in high school, and so I personally know that she has watched quite a few schools that she would not want to play at or be considered because of their style of play. So I think it's very important you learn how schools play and to see if it fits your strengths or if it's part of your weaknesses that you wouldn't be able to go there.
Okay, and the last thing I've got is just sort of a brief template of what a recruiting email might look like. Just a brief introduction, 2 or 3 sentences, straight to the point. Why are you emailing me? You know, that's what I want to know as a coach. Why my school? I want to know that this didn't go out to 200 people. I want to know that you've targeted us for some reason. Then just hit basics, you know, where are you from, height, weight, academic, couple of academic information, really, you know, quickly on that. Here's a highlight video, check this out. I think the best question you can ask is, what's the best way for me to get on your recruiting radar? And I've got some links on here to different things. The college boards, SATs, ACTs, NCAA, NAI Eligibility Center. If you know what you're studying, great. If you don't, I don't think that's a big deal. You know, budget per year, I think, is really important and something that gets missed. As a college coach, you're looking and you're going, okay, I've got a certain budget I'm working with. If this player has a pretty big budget and wants to come to the school and it's going to cost me 10% of a scholarship, that's a different conversation than if the student needs 60% of a scholarship. And putting that out there, save yourself a lot of time and save the coaches a lot of time. I think that obviously if you're a player who is going to be highly sought after and there may be big, close to full ride scholarships, it's not going to matter what you put down for your budget. You're going to be offered what you're worth. So you're not going to hurt yourself in that way, in my opinion, at least. Joe?
No, all good. All good. I hope we get some good questions. I hope they're going to be engaged and ask some questions, because I know this can be a very difficult thing, and, you know, being a parent going through this and everything like that. And with Bill's vast experience at his age, you should be able to get some good answers.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate this wonderful information that's really going to make a difference for our players. A couple of questions that came in ahead of time. One question is, whenever you're sending out resumes and things like that for a job, the email address matters that you're sending from. Do you pay attention to cutesy email addresses and sort of dismiss them? Do the players need to start now developing sort of that habit of using a more professional looking email address, even, you know, a Gmail address, but something that's a bit more professional than sending, you know, soccer23@gmail.com. Does that make a difference?
Bill, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, unless it's something inappropriate, I don't think it makes a big difference. But like I said earlier, like, we'll quickly recognize if all the emails are coming from mom or dad. So
The grammar is usually solid. You know, there's professional terminology.
you know, but yeah, I think, yeah, as long as it's not something really inappropriate, I'm not overly bothered by what the email address is.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
question. Good question. What else?
Does anyone have any questions? You have the ability to chat, or I'll make it so that you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Do you review?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. One question that just came in on the chat room is, do you review social media accounts? Very good question right there.
I'd say the majority of college coaches have their assistants that do that. I don't know how to get on to those things, but that's a very important thing. They do have their assistants monitor it. And so I think it's important to be professional and represent yourself properly, because you're going to be representing a university, and they're going to want to know that you're of the highest caliber off the field and on the field.
Excellent.
I would agree with Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. For videos, what do you guys want to see? And, you know, I just remember watching videos, and they're just these snippets of players beating another player. It may just be a zoomed in, you know, of their technical, but, you know, the rest of their movement off the ball and those types of things was never shown. It was just snippets of, you know, one-on-one or heading a ball. What do you think is, what do you want to see in a video?
Well, I'll start with Bill, and then you can add on is some of the things I don't really need to see. So there'll be a 4-minute video, and the first minute and a half is the person talking about themselves. And so, you know, I would rather see them play right away. Like Coach Elliott said, something dynamic early on to catch, the strengths, but someone chatting for a minute and a half or just juggling, you know, I want to get to the part. I look at the quality of play. I look at the athletes that are around them. If again, it's okay to put 5 seconds in, you know, introduce so they can recognize you, but someone who's trying to talk about the resume over a long period of time and we're not actually watching the soccer, so just be creative, but be quick about it, because after in Coach Hariyama, you remember after first 5, 10, 15 seconds, you're either engaged in it or you're not. I see some videos and towards the end is some of the better stuff. And I would have preferred to see that right away in the beginning as well.
Yeah. And what I would say is on the don'ts, don't replay the same clip 3 or 4 times. If we want to see it again, we can work a computer well enough to go back and look at it again. Don't slow things down because you think it looks cool. Because as coaches, we actually want to see it at live speed. We want to see it at the game, the speed that it's happening.
Don't speed it up in 1.5 times.
Yeah, don't speed it up 1.5 times either. We want to actually see it.
A little awkward. We've seen this.
I've seen both. Yeah.
But you know, they'll do a super slow motion 3 or 4 times, and you're like, there's probably a reason why they're doing it in super slow motion. We joke, but we've seen it all. I mean, Coach Hariyama, you remember the VHSs that used to come in when you were coaching?
But so don't do those things. Make sure your personality comes out. So I see a lot of defenders. I think it's more common if you're a striker, you're going to show your goals. But I think there's nowadays a lot of defenders that send out videos that show zero defending. They show them making little square passes in the back, left and right, left and right. I don't want to watch 3.5 minutes of that. I want to see what your personality is. Can you win a header and win a tackle? Can you knock a long pass and a short pass? How about your left foot? Can you use that? So you got to highlight whatever your personality is. And I would say what's in the last 2 years become more common, what I'm doing is I'm using technology more and more to recruit. If I really like the video and or seen somebody now in an ID camp or a tournament and seen some video clips that I like, I'm asking for a full game now. So I would have as a backup, I don't think I would necessarily include that. You could include it, but as a backup, if asked for it, I would have a full game ready to go to send out.
I have a defender in 05 again, one that I've coached, and they just won the State Cup championship here in Florida. But the defender won a tackle. She plays a good pass, and then she opened up to support it. So not just the tackle. So think about what you should be doing as a defender, because again, it's hard, so as a defender to find things, but winning a tackle, hitting a good pass, and then a good supporting angle. Show that in the entirety. Now, if you win the tackle and you misplace a pass, maybe just keep it at the tackle. Just being honest.
So we have a question that came in. What would you recommend? What would the recommended number of summer ID camps to attend be between freshman and sophomore year? And then again, between sophomore and junior year? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It depends on how you've narrowed it down. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would say that again, on the men's side, I don't even, as a freshman, early your sophomore year, maybe spring your sophomore year, and then your junior year and senior year when you want to be going to those ID camps. I mean, the girls is maybe a little bit earlier, but what I would say about the ID camps is they should be schools that you've probably already researched and everything like that. And don't pick a school that, you know, don't go to, like, for example, UNC Chapel Hill has a really cool ID camp. I'm going to go there, but you don't really want to go to school there. We're going to camp. Well, you have an opportunity to utilize the ID camps and pick out schools that you might be interested in and kind of going and getting a feel for it. So you should use those. Go to the places that you're interested in. It's annoying as a coach who's been doing it for a long time to receive an email that says, hey, I'm really interested in your university. I can't make your ID camp. Come watch me at so-and-so's ID camp. Well, it makes me go, well, how interested are you really in our university? Joe?
Yeah. You know, and again, do research also on the ID camps. You know, I know some of the ones that we do, you'll have a, you know, Division II coach, NAIA coach, Division III junior college coach. You'll have a variety of coaches there as well. So look at the numbers of how many people they're taking. You don't want to go to one that has a couple hundred and you're not going to be seen. So just do a little research as well into the specific ID camps. I mean, they're also great experiences. If you get the chance to go and you don't have to worry financially, I mean, they're also great experiences to become a little bit better, to get yourself outside of get yourself outside your comfort zone. You know, so if you do go as a freshman and knowing that your junior year, you're going to start to look for, you know, something a little bit more seriously, that gets you outside your comfort zone. So you're not freaking out the first time you go your junior year. So if you get the opportunity, go to some local ones and just get to where you're doing, playing in a different environment with people you don't know. So if you get the opportunity, do a couple, but really do your research and identify the ones that are going to be truly, some schools that you might see yourself at.
A question that's come in is, how do you respond to a camp invitation? For example, you have a college email you about going to their camps. What's the best way to respond to that?
Well, so if it's meaning the student has received an email from us inviting them to camp?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if you're going to camp, no response really. I mean, necessary. We'll see you at camp, or hey, thanks for the invite. I've registered. I'll see you at camp. You know, I mean, pretty simple. If there's a question, ask the question. You know, if it's an ID camp, and hey, Coach Joe, we want to know if there's going to be any other schools at the ID camp. Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe it's no. Just shoot a quick question back. I don't know. Joe, you may have a different point of view.
Yeah, your freshman, sophomore year, you're not allowed direct contact. So let's say we go out to an event and we see a team play. You'll probably, from the assistant coach, everybody on that team might get an invite and everything like that up and through your sophomore year. If you get into your junior year and you get a chance and you've been seen at a Disney tournament, you might get a quick little email from the coach that said, hey, saw you play, very interested in you coming. That's something that you probably want to put higher up on your priority list as well. So, and we can't respond as a sophomore. You send us something, are you interested? I noticed you have 3 midfielders. Would you be? So until your junior year, we can't have that direct contact with you guys.
And on the men's side, if you get an email late your junior year or in your senior year that you have a pretty good idea that it's personalized for you, meaning, hey, I saw you play against this team at the Disney Showcase. You were putting in crosses from the right side all day long, and you're like, yeah, that's it's definitely then you might want to respond, because any coach that's taking that kind of time to personalize those details and everything like that. So even if you can't make that camp, you might want to email back and say, hey, sorry, I can't make it, but if you're interested, and how can we keep this process going?
Another question that came in is about how many girls are recruited to a college team each year?
Yeah, it depends on the roster size. Each school is quite a bit different. Some schools take over 30, some a little bit, some quite a bit less than that. So that's where you have to do your individual research. And again, it'll depend on who you're graduating, front runners, defenders, keepers. And so that's where it's very important to get, go see the teams play and get to understand that. 6 to 8-ish per year, but again, it's just each school will vary. And that's the point. There's a lot of, that's not a lot for each team to be adding. It's difficult. So you got to get after it, become the best soccer player you can, and then look to do things. I know right now there's over 1,000. So not only are we recruiting players out of high school, we're recruiting players out of junior college, and we're recruiting players off the NCAA portal. There's over 1,000 youngsters on the NCAA portal on the women's soccer side. And over 800 of those are Division I players that are looking to leave their Division Is. So you got to be very thorough and very proactive in recruiting, getting yourself out there and being seen and not being generic. And you got to put a little effort into it. And I think it's very important with all the technology we have. I think you guys are at a good advantage if you want to use that.
Yeah, and I think the ownership has to come from the student athlete. You can't rely on, no matter how good or how connected your club coach is, you can't rely on that. You can't rely on your parents to do it for you. And to some degree, just college coaches seeing you at your games, you can't even rely on that. You've got to reach out, because when we go to big tournaments and showcases as head coaches, even if we take our top assistant with us, it's impossible to cover all the games. So we prioritize games based on, email conversations or people that have been to our ID camps. And so you've got to be proactive, and you got to take ownership of the process. You just can't sit back, wait, and think that it's going to happen.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That's all the questions I have from the chat room right now.
So I have one. It's not a question, but it's based on the experience that I had, and help me with this, Bill and Joe. So if I'm a student athlete that is ready to be on the edge to be recruited, and I want to go to University of West Florida, the first thing I should do, like you mentioned, is to send an email that is personalized, right? And then start going to the ID camps and get you to know myself, introduce myself to you, make sure you know who I am, and then make sure to follow up with some videos and highlights and grades and all of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty spot on. If that's one of the schools that you're looking at, you have to be very proactive, because there's a lot of youngsters out there that are looking for those spots at all those universities as well. So the more personalized you get and keeping us updated, sometimes we don't respond to every email, but if you keep us updated, I'll be in this tournament in 2 months. And like Coach Elliott said, if you've been in contact with us, we'll try to come by and watch a game at one of the showcases or something like that. If we haven't heard from you, don't hope that we just happen across your field and see the brilliance, because if we're only at a field for 5 minutes, you might not even be on the field. That might have been your water break. So you got to be very proactive and try to get specific as you move along, and watch so you kind of understand where you are. And you're not going to be able to talk your way into University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You're going to have the quality. So kind of gauge where you are by watching a lot of college games. With ESPN Plus and all this, you can watch so many games and see where you fit into their style. You just can't hope that this is going to happen or expect it to happen. You got to make it happen.
Most every school streams their games now as well.
Yeah.
So So another question that came into our chat room, how effective are club ID camps versus college ID camps?
Well, I know our local club here brings in a dozen different schools, and they can be effective as well. So it just depends on, are those the schools that you're interested in looking at? And it's just a small piece of the bigger, presentation that you're going to, present yourself to the school. So it depends on the schools that they have coming in and where you fit into that mix. That can be another avenue. Can you get yourself in front of a couple more colleges, or I know at these bigger schools, you'll be placed sometimes with a college that you might not have heard of, and that's your coach for the entire time. So although you go to one of the bigger schools camps, you might not even be seen by 99% of the colleges that are represented there. So try to do your research and do you rotate around, and so they can be helpful as well, but know which ones are the quality ones. We get invites to a lot, Coach Elliott, myself, and we know which ones that we're going to actually be able to work with the players. I want to work with the player, whether it's here on campus or I want to get to know their personality. I want to watch what they're doing, the 5 minutes before we start our session. Are their shin guards on? Are they prepared? Are they, moving around? Are they, I want to get to know them. So I'm watching what you guys are doing before you even start to train and play. So I want that connection. And so that's how I best decide. So if you do go to an individual ID camp, you'll get to know the coach's personality as well. So I think once you start to narrow it down, you want to get in front of that coach and hopefully be coached with them in that environment.
I think if your club offers an ID camp, then sure, go to it. Your staff has made an effort to get coaches to come in. From my point of view, that's usually assistant coaches going to those type of things. Got so many things pulling me in so many different directions as a head coach. What the likely result of a club ID camp that my school is represented at is that my assistant coach identifies a handful of people and comes back and sends them an email inviting them to our ID camp. And for the same reasons Joe mentioned, that's my preferred environment, because we, at least at our university, we actually work with the kids during the ID camp, and it gives us a chance to get to know the personality of the player and put them through activities that test certain skill sets that we want to see.
I saw a question down the bottom about goalkeeping. Where do you want to see? I know in the women's game, but I got to think so in the men's side, aerial, can you handle the box? Because there's a lot of set pieces and things like that. Are you good in the air? With the modern game, you've got to be good with your feet as well. So being able to hit the different range passes, you can show that. Can you fizz a ball to the midfield? Are you good with the ball coming back under pressure? But again, your reaction saves. It's harder to get on film your presence as a goalkeeper. I think that's massive, that you have to have a big game presence. And when you're at an ID camp or we're watching you at a club event, you have to have a big presence. And so those are some of the things as a goalkeeper that I want to see. Can you handle the physical duel on the flighted balls? Are you good with your feet? If your team gives up a goal, how do you react mentally? Do you melt? I don't want to see that nonsense. I want to see that you recover from that and you're ready for the next one. So I like those goalkeeper questions. Keep bringing them in. They're the best. They're the most important position on the field.
And I would agree. I mean, you've got to show some saves if you're making a video and you're a goalkeeper. You've got to show some saves. But what really separates things in the goalkeepers these days is the ability to control, deal with flighted balls into the box, whether it's on corner kicks, crosses, set pieces, and the ability to play with your feet. Those are where we start to separate people.
So this question may be directed a bit more towards Juan and Steve, but I'm not positive about that. Will coaches or someone at our club level or club council players will will someone at our club be able to counsel our players on what level and schools they should look at, since they better know their players' ability?
I'm gonna answer that one, and then I think Steve can also help me with it. But I would say yes. It's our responsibility to guide players into the best fit. Obviously, if a player has a massive interest in going to a certain school and they want to still try it, whether it might be higher level than they're supposed to, then it's their choice. But as coaches, I believe it's our responsibility to guide them properly.
Can I comment, Steve, before you jump in? What I would say also to answer that question, though, is, again, research schools. If you research based on the criteria we talked about earlier, you're probably going to come up with schools that span a variety of divisions and levels. So if you're looking at the stuff other than soccer first, and you're looking at the distance to home, the size of the school, and all these things we've talked about, then bring that list to your club coach. That will help them give you a little bit more direction, I would think. Steve?
Yeah, no question about that. You know, Bill's right. I think that, you know, typically what you talk to young players, and you mentioned the schools that they're interested in, of course, they're going to say the North Carolinas, Stanfords, the Tennessees, and Big One schools. But the reality is that the majority of the players cannot play at those schools. And, you know, we will help guide those players. But, you know, going back to it, you know, I think in the old days it was, hey, we're going to go to this showcase, we're going to be playing in Raleigh, and then some college coach is going to see my kid and recruit him. And it is so competitive out there. And just this was, 20 years ago when I was at West Florida recruiting with Bill, and just going to, say, Miami, the Orange Classic back then, and there's hundreds of teams, and you're looking at a field, you're seeing players left and right, but of course there's 100 other coaches who see that same player. And so I think it's really important that we understand that it's the player who has to recruit the school and not the other way around. You draw the interest, you show that you're interested. At West Florida, maybe marine biology or some business that they're strong in. And then Bill and Joe and any other college coach will say, okay, this player I have a shot at, and then they'll do more research about you. You know, you go to a Stanford, Florida, you know, you can have a wish list. There's no question about it, but the likelihood of that actually occurring, it won't be there. But we will help and guide players within our organization on finding the appropriate school and level. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is that parents and players, they don't understand what the level is at. You wouldn't think, you know, West Florida, Joe has a Division II, so it's at this lower level. But I guarantee you, I don't know too many players around here that would start for West Florida's women's team or their men's team. They're highly competitive. They're top 10 in the country, and the level is very, very good. And so, recruit the school. You do the work. And that's a question of mine, though. You know, in the old days, right? How many showcases do you go in, or tournaments that you attend, that you go in up to a field and you go in blind, not knowing any of the players?
Doesn't happen anymore, really. Very, very rare. That was an old way of doing things. Now it's with emails and videos and ID camps. For me, at least, I'm following up on kids now. When I go to tournaments and events, I'm following up on kids. Maybe I'll see somebody in the process, but I'm going there and targeting and following up and on kids that have had some previous contact with me.
Take Disney alone. Disney alone has 32 fields at their complex. So that's 64 teams playing every hour and a half in between games. So we have to be intentional. We have a spreadsheet that we say, I need to be on field 29 and watch this youngster, and you're not going to be able to watch full 90 because you have others. And so that's why it's great to have those relationships early and already know what you're looking for and have hopefully worked with them prior so that you will spend, you'll hunt them down.
So just asking you two personally, how many showcases and tournaments do you actually attend from West Florida? Do you guys go to Raleigh? The
Sometimes,
shootout?
sometimes.
Just
Well,
depending on
again,
how
just
many
if you're-
players write in.
It
Yeah, if you're in
depends.
the middle of your season.
Yeah.
We play in the fall, so it's really difficult. And so in December, the Raleigh is a good one, but it's cold and we are beach people. So we're more likely to do the Orlando ones, to be honest. Our school for in-state students, it's more affordable than out-of-state students. So every school has their niches. And so come spring, we do try to catch, we on the women's side, we try to catch a little bit more as well. But in the fall, we're trying to win a national title, and so it frees up in the spring to where you do try to catch everyone you can. Each school usually hosts something, an ID camp in the fall and something in the spring. Most schools do. So, once we see that those players and we like a handful, we'll go hunt them down. We will make it an effort to see them.
But going back, Joe, these are all players that have first written you that you are seeing.
Correct. There's a rare chance that we're going to go to a field and just blindly. Now, when I'm sitting there watching, a gal that contacted us, if there's somebody else that, okay, I need a left back and someone stood out, I'll go ask, I'll see the flyer and say, you see if they've committed or not. But we're not going up to a field and hoping to catch anybody. We're going specifically to see people that have contacted us and that we've kind of vetted through calling their club coaches and things like that. We've kind of made it okay. This is one of the ones that we're looking at trying to get a better look at this tournament.
Makes sense.
Well, thank you very much. We have no more questions in the chat window for you. It seems that this is a good time for us to call an end to this wonderful and informative session. We truly do appreciate you taking your time out of your busy days and away from your games to be able to join us to give some advice to our players and to help them move on and be successful.
All right. Well, thanks again, and good luck to everyone. And Steve and Juan, if there's a way we can help in the future, let us know.
Yeah, follow up with us and we'd be happy to help.
Definitely. Thank you. And Bill, do you have the sample letter you said?
It was in the presentation
Okay.
that I was doing.
Okay. There was okay.
And I'll go back and take a look, and if because I used it for something else previously, so let me take a look at it. But that might be probably share that.
Yeah, I was
Hey,
going to
can I-
ask if you could share that with us to put on our website.
Yeah, let me go back and take a look at it and make sure that if there's anything that needs to be changed or edited. But yes.
Hey, one more quick question. When you go to a tournament, do they still have the team profiles sheets that the manager always hands out?
I think those are still helpful.
Okay.
I do. I don't want a manager chasing me around the field, trying to give me one, but somebody standing there with a stack of them maybe in their hands so that they're easy to spot and easy to find. And those are also good in-game sources for me. If a manager's there with some brochures and I take a brochure and like Joe said, I had spotted the left back, and usually the manager knows as well as the coach whether that kid's committed or not. And that can determine whether I stay another 20 minutes at the game or move on to the next field. So I think they're good. I mean, again, I don't want somebody chasing you laugh when I say don't chase me around with it, but like sometimes I feel I'm being chased down as I walk between fields for flyers for teams that there's, from Washington State or somewhere that I'm not probably going to watch. So.
Yeah, very helpful. I would have them still available for coaches to find them. A lot of times I won't wear any college gear because I don't want every manager chasing me. They have no idea. I just look like someone's grandpa. So I'll go up. If I see a player I like and I need a brochure, I'll hunt that person down. I saw on the chat, and again, this is extra time stuff, but someone asked about a goalkeeper because what if you don't get any action during the game? And we'll go to watch them train and warm up prior. So it's very important, like from the time they're walking down to whatever, if we need a keeper and we'll go watch them warm up prior to the game, because like the question was, they might not get any action. And so how you handle yourself, we'll watch you train. I remember at Disney, my assistant coach was about 8 o'clock, showed up to 8 o'clock in the morning field that we were looking at a goalkeeper. And I'm like, dude, where you been? He goes, oh, well, they have coffee and donuts up there. I said, great, they have goalkeepers down here. So at 7:30, I was at the field watching the goalkeeper train because I knew they might not get any action. So it's important that they handle themselves, the keepers, prior to the game properly and warm up properly and seriously. So if whoever asked that question, I think that's a good, advice to really come prepared to warm up properly.
That's good.
He is still on the line, so that's
Oh,
good.
good.
That he's still here to hear that.
Oh, awesome. Send more questions. Again, goalkeepers are the best.
I was gonna say, I think Joe's liking our goalkeepers.
Yeah, man.
You haven't guessed by now, Joe was a goalkeeper. So
Yeah, exactly.
And I've also had teams that didn't have great goalkeepers, so I know how important they are. So,
All right. Well, thanks,
Good.
guys. We appreciate it. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch.
any
okay.
follow-up we can do, we'd be happy.
See ya.
Thank you guys for putting this on. It's not easy.
Bye.
So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone.